Some stories are told in whispers over tea, while others are carved directly into the skin through the brutal, unforgiving blade of betrayal. The story you are about to watch is not just a tale of heartbreak. It is an autopsy of a love built on calculated lies and the subsequent resurrection of a woman who refused to stay buried. In the heart of South Africa, stretching from the fast-paced concrete jungle of Johannesburg to the traditional hills of KwaZulu-Natal, and finally to the crisp oceanside air of Cape Town, this is the journey of Thembi. It serves as a stark reminder that the people we think we are building a future with are sometimes merely architects of our ruin. This is the chronicle of a wedding present that became the funeral of a false hope and the blueprint of an unexpected salvation. They say love is blind, but I never thought it could make you so utterly foolish that you miss the scaffolding collapsing right in front of your face. My name is Thembi. Long before I became an independent interior designer in Cape Town, I was a junior project manager at a mid-sized architectural firm in Johannesburg. I lived in a world of precise measurements, blueprints, and structural integrity, yet, when it came to my own life, I failed to notice that the foundation was built on quicksand. I met Ndumiso at a corporate networking mixer in Sandton. He was an estate surveyor for a commercial property group, educated, sharp-dressed, and highly respectable. We clicked instantly over our shared passion for urban development and design. Within months, our professional synergy bloomed into a deep, consuming romance. For 3 years, Ndumiso was the perfect partner. He showed me a version of himself that seemed to belong to me alone. He showered me with thoughtful gifts, helped me curate our shared apartment in Rosebank, and we split our living expenses seamlessly. We shared everything, or so I thought. There was one glaring anomaly in our blueprint. Ndumiso never allowed me to visit his family homestead in KZN. Every December or Easter, when I suggested a road trip to meet his people, his demeanor would shift. He claimed his mother suffered from severe chronic hypertension and that any sudden changes or unexpected visitors would add fatal stress to the household. "We must plan it perfectly, my love," he would soothe, kissing my forehead. "When the time is right, I will introduce my queen to my family. Just be patient with me." Completely blinded by the life we were building, I suppressed my intuition. "All right, my love," I would reply, burying my doubts beneath his promises. The cracks began to show on a mundane Tuesday evening in our Rosebank apartment. Ndumiso received a phone call, his face turning pale under the warm living room lights. He hung up and announced that he had to leave for KZN immediately. "My mother's condition has worsened," he said, packing a duffel bag with frantic energy. "The family needs me there to handle some urgent matters. I will be gone for a full week." My heart ached the moment the door clicked shut. We were addicted to each other's presence, and the apartment suddenly felt cavernous and cold. 2 days into his absence, overwhelmed by anxiety for his family, I sat down for coffee with my best friend Thando at a cafe in Rosebank. Thando, ever the romantic optimist, listened to my worries and leaned across the table. "Thembi, why are you sitting here mopping? This is your chance to show his family who you are. Don't wait for permission. Take an Uber to Park Station, catch the luxury bus to KZN and surprise him. Show his family that you care about your future mother-in-law." The idea sparked a fire in my chest. It felt like the ultimate grand gesture of love. That afternoon, I went on a shopping spree. I bought a premium wool blend traditional shawl and a warm jacket for his mother, alongside hampers of high-end traditional groceries, specialized teas, and artisanal cakes to show my respect. I boarded the overnight bus to KZN with a racing heart, playing out the scene in my head, Ndumiso opening the door, his eyes welling with tears of gratitude as he realized he no longer had to carry his family burdens alone. The journey was grueling, but the landscape shifted from the concrete of Gauteng to the rolling, lush green hills of rural KZN. By the time my local taxi dropped me off near his family homestead, it was late afternoon, around 4 p.m. As I approached the property, the quiet, rural atmosphere disappeared. The air hummed with the bass of a professional sound system playing soft, harmonious Zulu gospel music. White marquee tents dominated the yard. The gravel driveway was chalked with luxury SUVs and sedans bearing Gauteng and KZN registration plates. Catering staff in crisp uniforms moved between the tents. My initial thought was a wave of relief mixed with confusion. Perhaps his mother had recovered, or they were hosting a massive Thanksgiving prayer service for her health, I reasoned, tightening my grip on my heavy travel bags and grocery hampers. Nervous but determined, I walked through the open iron gates. Near the entrance of the main house, I encountered an elderly woman wrapped in a sophisticated royal blue traditional shawl. I bowed my head slightly, greeting her with the utmost respect. "Greeting, grandmother. May I please inquire if Ndumiso is here? I am Tembi, his partner from Johannesburg. I came to surprise the family." The woman's warm expression vanished instantly. She froze, looking me up and down, taking in my dusty travel attire, my bags, and the grocery hampers. The colour drained from her face. "My child," she whispered, her voice laced with sudden pity. "Are you certain you have the right homestead? Is it the Ndumiso who is getting married today?" The words didn't register as a language at first. They felt like a physical blow to my chest. A sudden drop in atmospheric pressure that made my ears ring violently. "What did you say, grandmother?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Married?" Before she could answer, the double wooden doors of the main house swung wide open. The photographer's flashbulbs went off inside the foyer. Out walked Ndumiso. He was breathtaking, dressed in a tailored, premium white three-piece suit with gold embroidery. On his arm was a stunning woman clad in a voluminous, pure white tulle wedding gown, her face glowing with triumph. Ndumiso's eyes swept across the courtyard and locked directly onto mine. In a split second, his smile transformed into a mask of pure terror. His jaw dropped, his face turned a sickening ash-grey colour. The laughter and chatter in the yard died down instantly, rippling outward until the entire homestead fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Guests turned their heads to follow the groom's horrified gaze. They saw me, a strange woman standing in the mud, holding travel bags, with tears cutting clean tracks through the dust in my face. It wasn't a prayer service. It was his traditional and white wedding crossover. The crushing truth crashed over me. He hadn't travelled to KZN to turn to a sick mother. He had been leading a double life. The woman on his arm wasn't a stranger. She was his long-term partner, approved and embraced by his entire family, while I was merely his Johannesburg secret. The woman funding his city lifestyle while he built his real future here. Time dilated. The bride's smile faltered slightly as she felt Ndumiso's arm stiffen, entirely unaware of the invisible blade he had just driven through my heart. The whispers began, sharp, venomous, and curious. In the movies, the betrayed woman screams. She tears down the decorations, slaps the groom, and ruins the dress. But when a betrayal is deep enough to fracture your soul, it robs you of your voice. The sheer weight of the lie crushed the oxygen from my lungs. My knees gave out, buckling beneath me. I collapsed onto the damp earth and the grocery bags ripped open. The boxes of cakes and containers of milk spilled, sinking into the KZN mud. Ndumiso took a panicked step forward, instinctively reaching out a hand covered in a gold wedding band. But his mother, a sharp-eyed woman who looked entirely healthy, stepped into his path. She caught him firmly by the forearm, anchoring him to his spot, shooting him a glare that explicitly commanded, "Don't you dare ruin this day." I forced myself to look up, locking eyes with him one final time. I didn't scream. I didn't utter a single syllable of accusation. Slowly, using every ounce of survival instinct left in my body, I stood up on my own 2 feet. I left the bags, the clothes, and the gifts rotting in the mud. I turned my back on the tents, the luxury cars, and the man I loved, walking out of the gates with legs that felt like heavy blocks of lead. I walked down the dirt road away from the homestead, completely detached from reality. Cars passed me, hooting warnings as I stumbled along the unlit shoulder of the rural road, but I was numb to the danger. My mind was an absolute vacuum. By the time I reached the nearest regional bus depot, night had fallen, bringing a biting, bitter cold. I slumped onto a rusted metal bench, staring blankly at the concrete floor. My phone began to vibrate violently in my pocket. Ndumiso's name and picture flashed across the screen, over and over again. The very image that had brought me immense joy just 24 hours ago now filled me with a deep, physical nausea. Without shedding another tear, I switched the phone off, unzipped my backpack, and shoved it deep into the bottom of the bag. The realization settled in like frost. My entire life in Johannesburg, the beautiful Rosebank apartment, the curated mid-century modern furniture, the 5-year plan we had mapped out was nothing but smoke and mirrors. As I sat shivering on that bench, waiting for the 11:30 p.m. transit bus back to Johannesburg, a shadow fell over me. A young man approached quietly. He wore a sharp corporate suit, carrying a leather briefcase and a folder of architectural documents. He looked like an engineer or a consultant returning late from a regional project site. He stopped a respectful distance away, observing my pale face and violent shivering. "Sister," he said, his voice remarkably gentle and calm. "Are you waiting for the GO train link or the long-distance coach? It is incredibly cold and this station is unsafe past 10. I couldn't speak. I simply stared at his shoes, my body trembling uncontrollably from a mixture of shock and the drop in temperature. Seeing that I was in deep distress, he didn't press me for answers or demand an explanation. Instead, he unbuttoned his heavy, lined wool overcoat, stepped forward and gently draped it over my shoulders. He then sat on the far end of the bench, maintaining a respectful distance, but remaining steadfastly by my side. He stayed there, a silent guardian in the dark, until the headlights of the Johannesburg-bound bus cut through the misty night air. That single, quiet act of kindness from a complete stranger was the only thing that kept my heart from turning completely to stone that night. The Johannesburg sun did not offer a warm welcome when I arrived the next morning. The harsh light burned my bloodshot eyes as I took a taxi back to Rosebank. I unlocked the door to our apartment. The space smelled of his expensive cologne and the fresh linen spray we had chosen together. On the dining table, 2 half-empty coffee mugs from the morning he left sat undisturbed. It was a cruel juxtaposition. The apartment remained frozen in time, yet my entire universe had undergone a violent cataclysm. I didn't break down. The grief hardened into a cold, clinic efficiency. I pulled out my laptop and called a commercial moving company that my architectural firm frequently utilized for office relocations. I knew Ndumiso's wedding festivities would wrap up over the weekend, and he would return to Johannesburg by Monday to resume his facade. "I need a full pack-and-move team within the hour," I told the dispatcher. When the movers arrived, I gave them surgical instructions. Because I had managed our finances meticulously, every major asset was tracked. "Pack everything bought under my name or with my capital," I commanded. Within 2 hours, the apartment was stripped bare. The plush brown velvet sofa, the 65-inch television, our platform bed, the minimalist dining set, and every piece of premium kitchenware were loaded into the truck. Because the lease was solely registered in my name and paid from my account, I had already submitted an emergency lease termination form to the building management, settling the penalties with my savings. I left the apartment completely empty, save for a single sheer curtain fluttering against an open window. On the built-in kitchen island, I left his secondary city phone and a small, precise note. Have a beautiful marriage, Ndumiso. Never contact me. Never look for me. If you ever step foot near my place of work, I will ensure your corporate compliance board receives the financial statements of how you utilized company-reimbursed stipends for personal travel. By the time 2025 rolled around, Johannesburg was ancient history. I relocated to Cape Town, using the absolute remainder of my savings and the liquidation of my old assets to launch a boutique commercial and high-end residential interior design firm. The first 18 months in the mother city were a lesson in survival. I lived in a cramped studio apartment in Woodstock, surviving on black coffee, bread, and sheer willpower. But my architectural background gave me an edge. I understood spatial planning, structural load-bearing limits, and corporate budgeting better than my competitors. By early 2026, my firm secured a massive contract to redesign a luxury boutique hotel chain along the Atlantic seaboard. I became a new version of myself, sharper, fiercely independent, and emotionally untouchable. On a crisp afternoon in 2026, I emerged from a highly successful contract signing at a boardroom overlooking the V and a waterfront. I was dressed in a tailored cream power suit, holding the keys to my newly acquired vehicle. As I walked through the premium parking lot, I noticed a man lingering near the exit lane.
He was thin, gowned even. His shoes were scuffed and worn at the heels, and his posture was completely broken, carrying none of the certain arrogance he once possessed. As I approached my car, he turned around. It was Ndumiso. Our eyes locked for the first time since that rainy afternoon in KZN. The power dynamic had completely inverted. I stood there, an accomplished corporate executive, while he looked like a man utterly defeated by life. His shoulders dropped in profound shame. "Sihle," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Is that really you?" Through the industry grapevine in Thando, I had eventually learned the aftermath of his choices. The woman he had married in KZN didn't love him. She left the lifestyle she thought he maintained in Johannesburg. When Ndumiso returned to Gauteng to find an empty apartment, an evaporated lease, and a massive financial black hole, his life began to unravel. Unable to maintain the dual financial balance of a rural household and a new city residence, he defaulted on loans. His wife drained his remaining savings accounts, filed for a highly publicized customary divorce, and his family disowned him to distance themselves from the social shame and corporate fallout. He had fled to Cape Town, looking for any low-level surveying work just to afford rent. Ndumiso took a tentative step toward me, his eyes filling with tears. "Sihle, please, just 5 minutes." I was pressured by my elders, misled by expectations. I lost everything. I am living in a commune in Salt River. Please, even if it's just a junior consulting role at your firm, help me. I looked at him calmly. I expected to feel anger, or perhaps a twisted sense of vindication. Instead, I felt absolutely nothing, just the mild curiosity you reserve for a historical artifact. I offered a polite, professional smile. "Ndumiso, I forgave you a long time ago. Your betrayal forced me to dismantle a flawed life and build a flawless one on my own terms. But the woman who stood in the mud at your wedding no longer exists. I wish you the best of luck with your job hunt." I unlocked my car, stepped inside, and drove out into the Cape Town sunshine, leaving him standing in the rearview mirror. 30 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway of my home overlooking the ocean in Camps Bay. As I opened the front door, the warm aroma of dinner greeted me. Simpiwe stepped out of the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel, his face lighting up with a brilliant smile. Yes, the very same man who had wrapped his wool overcoat around my shivering shoulders at that freezing regional bus station years ago. As it turned out, Simpiwe was a structural engineer who had been consulting on the regional rail project that night. We had reconnected months later through a mutual professional project in Cape Town, and our shared values quickly laid the foundation for a profound, transparent love. Simpiwe loved me without secrets, without hidden families, and with an absolute reverence for my independence. Walking into his arms, I finally understood. Sometimes a heartbreak isn't tragedy. It is simply the universe clearing away a poorly constructed structure so you can build a masterpiece in its place. Sihle's story reaches its end not with a cry of vengeance, but with the quiet, triumphant hum of a life well lived. It stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit when faced with cold-blooded deception. Ndumiso sought to build a house of cards on a foundation of betrayal, only to watch it scatter in the wind. Meanwhile, Sihle took the very stones thrown at her and constructed an empire of her own. In the arms of Simpiwe, she found that true love does not require you to diminish yourself or live in hiding. Life will often test your structural limits, but as long as you refuse to let your foundation crumble, the master architect above will always provide the materials for a beautiful redesign. If this story touched you in any kind of way, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Now tell us, if you were in Sihle's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have caused drama at the wedding? Would you have given Ndumiso a job? Or would you have just let it go? Until we meet next time.